Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, the place to come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker and welcome to episode 328. Why you keep showing up the same way. The patterns you learn to survive. Well, welcome as we finish out this month, which you know has been all about getting away from fear, looking at how fear has been protecting you, but also running your life at the same time. And what are some ways that we can look at how our early patterns continue to show up in our life and in our relationships? So we want to wrap all this up by talking about why you keep showing up the same way in your life. And where did these patterns come from? And more specifically, why? So have you ever caught yourself thinking, why do I always do this? Why is it so hard for me to just say what I need? Or why do I keep ending up in the same kinds of situations? And a lot of people think it's just their personality, but it's really not. It's often a role. And it's a role that you learn to play early on to navigate your environment, to stay connected, and to keep things steady. And we've been talking a lot about that the past couple of months here on the show. But the thing that most people don't realize is that you might still be playing that role even when you don't need it anymore. Because now you're a grown-up, you're not in your family, you're not a 5-year-old in your family who is powerless and trying to survive. But first we got to look at how these roles didn't come out of nowhere. Like no one just decides that, I think I'm going to be the one who fixes everything in this family, or I'm just going to ignore my needs, or I'm going to keep the peace at all costs, especially my own sanity. No, those roles are learned, and they come from environments, which we talk about here all the time, where emotions weren't handled well. Needs weren't consistently met, not perfectly, but consistently. There's a difference. Tension may have felt very uncomfortable or very unsafe, emotionally unsafe, sometimes physically unsafe. And connection required adaptation, and adaptations that kids are not supposed to have to make is what I mean by that. I'm not talking about cheerleading the resilience that kids have. I think there's a downside to that cheerleading where we're not talking about the cost to them. So when you were little, you figured out what worked to survive, basically. And so therefore you became maybe the one who kept things calm when things became upsetting or chaotic in the home. Maybe the one who handled things because grown-ups couldn't for whatever reasons. They weren't home. They were home, but depressed in their room. When dinner needed to be made, maybe they were drunk, maybe they were acting out, maybe they were depressed, maybe they just had whatever going on, maybe they had health issues, very real health issues where they wanted to show up, but they couldn't. Maybe you were the one who didn't ask for much because you had siblings who asked for maybe too much. Maybe the other role that's very common is the scapegoat in the family, where one child acts out all the emotional pain of the family. And so they draw a lot of energy from the family to go to counseling, bail them out of jail, go to the principal's office and have meetings, that kind of thing. Or maybe you just had a sibling who they themselves had health or cognitive issues where, unfortunately, they had to use up a lot of the family's resources. Maybe you just felt like mom and or dad or your caregivers were overwhelmed and maybe they didn't have great boundaries, so they shared a little too much. And so you figured, well, at least I won't ask for anything so mom won't be so stressed. or dad won't get upset as much. Okay. So these are roles, and they're very common, and a lot of them we're familiar with. And what I want to say is you can play more than one, and these can shift back and forth over time depending on a lot of variables. And so what I want you to think about is, are you still playing some of these? Like, you may be very clear on what you used to do. And a lot of times we can be in denial that we're still doing some of this stuff. So that's what I want you to kind of clue into, kind of think about and get real. Like the first one is the peacekeeper. Again, the person who kept tension down, tried to avoid conflict, tried to get people to play nice and like each other, made you very uncomfortable when people are upset. Conflict was scary, and maybe it really was back then. But how does that show up now? Now it can look like you can avoid honesty. You might fear rocking the boat. You focus on what everyone else needs. You say yes when you really mean no. You struggle to have really hard conversations, and that includes hearing loving, constructive criticism, because your self-esteem is wrapped into this too. Okay, so being the peacekeeper invariably means people pleasing. And I know some of you are very proud of this and wear it like a badge. And I have a lot of clients who fight me on this. And in the most loving way I can find, I'm like, yeah, you're lying to those people that you said you'd be fine doing that for when that wasn't your truth. So I mess with my clients in a loving way, but we have to look at that. We have to look at our fear of conflict keeps us from showing our insides out there, of course, because it's too risky. Maybe your old role was being the over-responsible one. You stepped up when others didn't and or couldn't. But now in your relationships, maybe you carry too much. This could be at home and at work. Usually if we're doing it in one arena, we're doing it in both. You feel responsible for everything. I think one in both can be true, where A, you put people around you who aren't as responsible as you, so you have to be the one. And B, you don't negotiate what you need. You just kind of go in and by default become the person who takes care of everything. And so you overfunction in your relationships. And then you also feel guilty resting or pulling back or saying, sorry, that doesn't work for me. It's very scary to let go and let other people do things. It's hard to know how to negotiate what you need. I work with people a lot on this. And when I work with couples, I do a lot of this negotiating work because they don't know how. Because one of the downsides is you can become the controlling person in the relationship and difficult to be around. Because you're parenting everyone, including your partner, maybe including your coworkers or colleagues and your friends and your sister. Maybe back then you were the fixer. You tried to manage other people's emotions or problems. Solution focused, probably really good at logistics, very quick on your feet. That can get blurred with peacekeeping and being responsible too. And so your big thing is trying to help other people feel better. Fix their feelings is the phrase. Saying things like, oh, it'll be okay. It'll be fine. You're great. You did fabulous. No, don't worry about it. You basically had to calm other people down so everything would be okay. And I'm sorry you had to do that. It was never your job as a kid, ever. It's never the child's job to fix things in the home, ever. It makes you the rescuer. Again, one in both. You draw people into your life who need a lot of fixing because they're not taking care of their own shit. They're not responsible enough. They're not maybe emotionally responsible enough, mature enough. But then you also have the propensity to take on what isn't yours because you're trying to fix them so you can be okay. So maybe today you still jump in to help instead of letting others own their things. And you feel drained and burnt and probably physically sick by this point, but you keep doing it because you don't know what else to do. Again, it's terrifying to trust, to let go, to just be. It causes a lot of conflict in relationships because, again, if you're the fixer, you're probably the controller too. Not in a, when I say controlling, I don't mean in a narcissistic, menacing kind of way. I mean a fear-based, oh my gosh, I can't count on you people to do anything kind of way. So I want to make that distinction. And finally, maybe you're the one who didn't need anything. You learned it was not safe or effective to have needs for lots of good reasons. And I've covered that in different episodes in the past 6 months. So if you're not sure of what I mean by that, please go back and check that out. But essentially, it means that you had to disconnect from your own needs because as a child, subconsciously, you knew darn well that was not going to happen. People weren't going to show up with empathy for you to help you feel psychologically safe as a little kid. To know that you needed guidance and to be taught how to do things. We talked about that in a recent episode with Mark and Lynetta. And people don't talk about that piece enough where their parents didn't know how to let them be kids and to teach them how to do things. They expected them to be little grown-ups because the parents themselves were raised that way. It's a multi-generational gift that keeps on giving, right? And so guidance, help, support, listening, mirroring. And so you learned how to disconnect from your own needs. Your mantra is, I'm fine when you're not. And so today, you still disconnect from your own needs. You have a hard time asking for help and a hard time receiving it, yet being resentful because no one helps you, right? At the same time, you act out and or your body acts it out because you're not in touch with what you need. And that's why boundaries and needs go hand in hand, like I talk about all the time. Because if you struggle with this, you probably struggle with boundaries, is my guess. And that's a whole nother episode. We could get all into that again. So those are some of the roles, and you can like bounce back and forth between different ones depending on whether it's Tuesday or Thursday. And that's okay, because as you listen, I'm sure you see the connections between focusing out there to be okay, not being authentic, not being equal, not knowing how to negotiate what you need, and not knowing how to really partner, not knowing how to receive love and help. Not having boundaries, not feeling safe. And what I want to stop and say is so much trauma can be behind these roles. And there's all sorts of trauma. You could have some little t trauma, but enough of it piled up over the years that it qualifies. This is all fear. These roles are all formed out of fear, trying to make things okay that were not your job to make okay. Trying to survive. Kids who didn't need to do all this, they have zero interest in playing these parts and playing these roles. They're busy being a kid, goofing off, having fun, letting parents do the grown-up things so they can be a kid and just do all the developmental tasks that they were supposed to do, cognitively, socially, psychologically, physically. Okay. So wherever you are on that continuum, it is always important to continue looking at, with lots of love and compassion and empathy for yourself, where do you struggle? Why does that make sense? And what is still playing out today? Because here's the thing, these roles, boy, I can tell you from my chair, they really start to backfire. Because here's the honest part, what worked then doesn't usually work now. They're only going to work in really dysfunctional relationships, and it's still only going to work for a minute. Because it creates resentment and exhaustion and disconnection and tons of conflict, by the way, and confusion in relationships. Because now, and this gets kind of deep, but people don't fully know you because you don't even know you. We can't be connected to self and play all these roles. It doesn't work. It backfires because you feel like you're doing more than others, and you probably are. But that's not a healthy thing. And you're not showing up with emotional honesty, and you're not showing up with boundaries. And so people, start to feel, but I don't know how to change this, Mary. This is just how I am. But it's not. Doesn't have to be. And this is where people really get stuck because, and this is where, like I was saying earlier, my clients fight me on it, and I understand the resistance. I totally do. And I've done a lot of this work myself. So their roles don't just feel familiar, they feel necessary. And I mean necessary to survival. And that is very true because letting go of them can feel like, well, wait, if I don't do this, things will fall apart. Or if I say something, it's going to create conflict and I don't think I can handle that. Or if I show my needs, it'll be too much. And then the other one that people won't say out loud is, I'm afraid to show what I need because I'm going to be disappointed. It's going to confirm my deepest fear that my partner can't or doesn't want to meet my needs. And then I'm going to have to make some really difficult decisions. And so when you see the pattern, your system says, don't change that. This is what keeps things working. But even if it's quietly really costing you, and it is. And so how do you start shifting without overwhelming yourself and freaking yourself out? Well, you don't need to, and you're not going to drop the role all at once. No one does. It's a Linus blanket. You're going to hold on to it until one day you realize you didn't grab it and put it in the car with you, and you were fine. You just need to start noticing when it shows up. Just awareness first, like in real time. I want you to kind of go through your day and just think about quietly, what role am I in right now? And why? Why do I think that? And why do I think that? What am I doing? Am I rescuing? Am I not saying what I need? Am I smoothing things over because I'm really afraid to say no? Just think about that without judgment. You're just observing, kind of neutral, thinking, look at that. That's interesting. And you get here and you can be more neutral when you have a lot more context and understanding of maybe why you stepped into this role in the first place. And it was not your fault. Your shame will keep us from being able to look at these roles and not feel like shit about ourselves. And so if you're ready, you can start doing this work and say, what do I actually feel or need here? Now, you're not going to say what you need. You're not going to express it. You're not going to take care of it. That's okay. No one does it first. I just want you to acknowledge it. And do you see the shift right there? You are actually acknowledging it for yourself. You're saying in your own heart, in your own head, I'm feeling really tired and I need a break. I need to sit down. And I don't think you're going to ask for that because you're not ready to do that yet. But think about how powerful that is, that you're finally acknowledging what you need. And then I just want you to think about, again, not that you're going to do it right away, but what would it look like to respond differently just a little bit? Now, this work can be done in such gradients. And as I say all the time, I love that because A, that's doable. B, you're not going to freak yourself out by doing it. And sometimes people don't even notice exactly what you're changing, but they just notice it feels better. And that's okay. And if you do a little bit at a time, you can just adjust to it slowly over time and you're not traumatizing yourself. Remember earlier we talked about how much of a rug ripper it can be to let go of one of these roles. No one does it all at once at first. And so start small, like maybe walking back in the room, like I say all the time, and just say a little bit more of what you think. Or make yourself pause before you automatically jump in and help. Or if you start helping, just say, oh, sorry, gotta go. Or practice in small ways letting someone else carry their part, like literally carry their own dish to the sink, okay? Sometimes it is as basic and small as that. And I know you don't want to admit that to people, that maybe that happens in your home where you grab everyone else's plates, but it can be that small. But it's so symbolic. Every piece of work you do around this stuff has so much more weight to it than you'll ever know until you look in the rear view a year from now. Here's a big one, allowing a little bit of discomfort instead of trying to smooth it over. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them be upset. Not that we're trying to hurt them, but just let them have their feelings. Let people have their own behaviors. And these are small shifts, but they really start to change everything quietly as you go. And that way you can do a little bit. And I was just talking to a client earlier today, and it's like, she was saying how hard it is to imagine getting started. I'm like, do what you can. Do what you can, because what you do is going to beget more. You're going to want more and better. We all do. Start where you are. Keep doing it. You will slowly, gradually, bit by bit, and it's a bought and paid for journey that's really worth it. You will shift away from these roles to being more you, more authentic. You're going to have better boundaries. You're going to be more emotionally honest. You're going to really crave relationships where there's negotiation that's followed through upon. Imagine that. And then there's trust, and there's partnership, and there's a lot less anxiety. There's growth. There's some hard moments, but you're shifting away from that slowly, little by little. And what that means is if you have a crappy week and you don't work on it at all, it's okay, because on Monday you can get back on the horse. That's what I love about this work. The more you do, the better, but you want to do it real. So you want to do it slowly, and you want to think as you go, and you want to learn as you go. Learning is a big part of this journey to change your thinking, to do a lot of healing. Because if you had these roles, my guess is there weren't grown-ups to sit down and validate your thinking and your feeling. And so as you do this journey, you're giving that to yourself. And hopefully you're sitting with a coach or a group who also can give you mirroring back. I know you hear me preach about that all the time, but a lot of this we can't do alone, and we're not supposed to. So know that if you have a few badges from the roles we talked about today, that you're not this way by accident. You learned it and you adapted in ways that made sense at the time, because they did. And the more you look back and the more you learn and understand, the more the puzzle pieces will click into place. And also, I want to remind you, you're not in that environment anymore. Even if you put people around you today that are similar to those folks back then, you have choices. You're a grown-up. You can take care of yourself now. You're not a kid anymore. And that role you learned to survive, well, it isn't the same as who you are now, or at least it doesn't have to be. And you're allowed to start showing up differently whenever you're ready and however you're ready. So today we talked about how many of the ways we show up in relationships aren't random. Like, I don't think they are. I think a lot of them have to do with the roles we learned early in life to navigate our environments and to stay connected and thus to survive. And so we took a little deeper look at the common roles people carry into adulthood. And they're not all the roles. We didn't get through all of them today. We got to the most common ones. And we looked at how those patterns can really quietly influence our communication, our boundaries or lack thereof, and essentially our emotional connection. And so hopefully you, no matter where you are on that continuum of work on this, resonated with some things today, and loved ones in your life, maybe seeing the roles that they're stuck in, and have compassion and understanding, and also the willingness, if you want to, you can shed those roles. You don't need them anymore. You can just be you, and we'd love it if you did. Thank you so much for hanging out and listening today. Hopefully you walked away with something helpful. I have some great resources, and the links to them are in the show notes. And if you really want to take this work further and you deserve to, check them out. If you have any questions on anything, reach out. I'm here. All right, so pay it forward, keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you can begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now so you can really own it later.